Welcome to the Priority Paradigm. I'm Shay Oliver. These are the stories of people who have taken a look at their lives and said something's more important, and then made a radical change. Today, I'm with a friend of mine, Phil Cerdorian, who is a counselor, therapist, and life coach in Longmont, Colorado. Somebody who's helped me when I've had some significant issues in life and wanted to make some changes. I talked to him when I launched the Priority Paradigm because I thought, wouldn't it be cool if he would give me somebody to talk to, because he talks to people who are making changes all the time. And I was absolutely thrilled when Phil said, I'd like to tell you my story. So, without further ado, Phil, let's go back in time and talk a little bit about how you took a look at your life and then made a radical change.
Yeah, you bet. Well, I grew up in, there's an old Bob Dylan song that says, my name means nothing, my age means less. The country I come from was called the Midwest. So, I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, big Catholic family, pretty normal childhood, Catholic schools, went to college, got a business degree. Then I was like, oh no, what do I do now? Entered a few more classes, College was pretty good. A teacher told me, just practice interviewing. So I got a practice interview and I got a job offer on my first, interview.
So you did what a lot of people dream about doing when they're ending college.
Yeah. And went back to the teacher, said, I'll get some experience, take it. So I got a job as a sales rep for Philip Morris, tobacco.
Mm-hmm.
They gave me a brand new car, an expense account, and I'm wearing a suit. And the whole world's telling me, you made it, dude.
Huh?
But inside, it felt kind of crappy. So I did it for like a year and a half, trying to get that practical experience, and I thought maybe I'll go sell something I believed in more. But then at that point, I was really fed up and disgusted and felt like I was following other people's advice most of my life.
Uh-huh.
And I said, I'm going to start doing things I want to do,
Right.
So I went to Mardi Gras with some friends, had a really good time. Went to Jamaica for a couple of weeks. And, smoked some weed, but was also doing yoga on the beach.
Well, that's not a bad thing.
And yoga, God, I was feeling so good. The stress was peeling off. I was having some kind of blissful experiences. And I decided there on the beach in Jamaica, I'm going to go study yoga. So I went home, moved back in with my parents. I'm like 22, maybe 23 at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And I started doing yoga and meditating every day, reading books, and I'm working 2 jobs. My friends are mourning me as if I died. And I applied to this ashram in Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
And they accept me, and I'm a pretty serious student at this point, and my friends think I'm joining the Hare Krishnas.
Sure.
And I think, do we need to do an intervention here?
Sure.
But I go off for like a 3-month residential program, and it's great. I'm doing yoga twice a day and chanting, and I like the people. There's a Swami there from India, and he's funny
so cool.
and radiant. It's just pretty amazing energy, and he says, don't believe anything, but this is an ancient path, and if you follow it, you'll have an experience. If you're serious, a couple months, not so serious, 6 months, less serious, a year. If you don't have something in a year, forget about it, go back in the world, So, long story short, I woke up one day and had a experience of my true nature, you might say.
Sure.
Or what this yogis call samadhi.
Uh-huh.
And it lasted for 3 days. I felt completely present. My mind was calm. And I felt like my questions had been answered, So,
what'd you discover?
It's hard to put into words. It was more like a knowingness about who I was.
Mm-hmm.
Not in words, but kind of a deep place in myself.
Mm-hmm.
So they wanted me to stay. I was kind of a serious student, but I was like, I got it, I didn't realize till later, but that was the beginning,
Right.
Anyway, the point is, my whole life shifted after that. I moved to Seattle, new friends. I became a social worker. I started hiking and camping, and my whole life shifted. So, and you know, it's a lot of these traditions, if you have this experience through true nature, then you get on track with who you are. You know, and so, you know, I worked some other jobs too, but then I, you know, got into a graduate program, came to Boulder, and studied psychology. I've been doing that ever since, you know, and it feels more right. My conditioning in the Midwest was basically, you know, get a good job, make a lot of money, work hard, be a good person, and everything will work out. So I was following that script, and then until I was like, you know, this needs a little further tweaking here.
So what didn't feel right while you were selling cigarettes?
Well, you know, I was into health, you know, so it didn't feel right to be selling cigarettes. And, you know, I think sales will be fine if you believe in the product, and, you know, there's nothing wrong with it. But I think actually that one of the best ways to find out who you are is to be something you're not.
Say more.
Well, if you go into being something you're not, I did 180 from there. You know, it catapulted me into something much more who I was.
Sure.
You know, social work, psychology, yoga. So there's, you know, there's no wrong choices. There's only learning.
Yep.
You know, hopefully it's not illegal or dangerous.
Right. Sure.
But, you know.
So, as you were working, what did you do to try to find yourself while you were still, before you took off to Mardi Gras, and before you took off to the beach of Jamaica? I mean, you had a sense that you weren't in the right place.
Yes.
What were you doing during that time to try to figure out what direction do I need to go?
Yeah.
Or were you? Or were you
That's a
just
good question.
rolling, going, I'm miserable, I'm just going to sit here?
No. Well, the thing that got me was when I was working for Philip Morris, I was going to the rec center playing basketball, lifting weights. And then on a whim, I took a yoga class. And I was like, wow, this is great. And I could lift more weight. My basketball got better. I got a little more integrated and coordinated. So I became fascinated. And I had a tea with this yoga teacher a couple times, and I all of a sudden became fascinated with yoga. But I pretty much, you know, when I quit my job, I went to Mardi Gras pretty much right after that. And then Florida, and then Jamaica, and also, you know, I've been drinking and smoking weed, and that was like losing its appeal to me. Like it was kind of like, same old thing. And so I knew there was something more.
Sure.
And so yoga was a vehicle for that.
Cool. So as you went through the process and made that, quit your job, and began to explore who you really were and trying to find out who am I going to be and what am I going to do with my life? You said you lost a lot of friends.
I did.
Who was supporting you during this time? Were there people in your life that were actually saying, hey, dive in, figure this out?
Yes, there were. Great question. My parents are pretty open. You know, they're Catholic. They're, you know, yoga, a little bit wary of that. But
Sure.
they're like, well, you've seen some good changes happening here. Well, just go with it. They were supportive. And my oldest sister, who had read some books on yoga and Buddhism, and she was very supportive. And there were a couple friends who understood, but I'd say most of them didn't.
And how did that feel, having them disconnected from you?
It was a little disconcerting, but I was determined. Like I said, you know, it's like, I'm not listening to anybody. I am not. I'm trying to be interdirected rather than influenced by my peers, which I had been very much so in high school and college.
Sure. I think we're all
Very much so.
A lot of us are that way.
And so I got really focused on what I wanted, you know.
Very cool. So how much of a role did your family play in making any of the decisions? You said you're getting focused, and these were the people supporting you. Were they influencing you at all, or were they just very open to whatever direction you needed to go?
Yeah. I'd say they were open to what direction I wanted to go,
And how important do you think it is to have people around you that are like that?
Oh, totally. Totally important.
Mm-hmm.
As a parent, I know if I get really controlling, the kids are going to resist me.
Uh-huh.
There's nothing wrong with guiding and giving your opinion and sharing what, your own wisdom, but not getting too forceful with that, I think.
I totally agree.
Is pretty wise.
I totally agree. All right, so let's go back in time and put you back as a cigarette salesperson.
Yeah.
And let's not find yoga.
Okay.
Where would you be today?
Well, that's a good question. I think I still would have quit. I probably would have followed a sales track,
Mm-hmm.
Like an idea I had was to sell music or records or something.
Sure.
At that time.
Do you think you'd be as happy?
No, I don't think so.
So today, when you look at what was important in your life then and what's important in your life now, what are the differences?
Yeah. Well, at that, time of selling cigarettes, I was kind of in health, but I was also somewhat of a hedonist.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, you just make money and pleasure, that's the way to go.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
But then that runs its course. After a while, it doesn't feel so great,
Sure.
And,
Yeah.
You got hangovers and
And they hurt more as every year goes by.
Right.
Sure.
So I would say that I went for the deeper meaning, which
Mm-hmm.
is for me service. I felt called to service.
Mm-hmm.
Called to helping others, transformation, tools for coping, for awareness, for getting clear on a direction in life.
Sure. Outside of yoga, how do you get clear on a direction in life?
Well, I think there's a lot of ways, and I think people have to ask themselves the right questions, and also try a lot of things out.
Mm-hmm.
We find out what we like by trying a lot of things out and experiencing things and how does this feel, and also our heroes, I think, are a big indication of where we need to go or want to go.
Sure.
People we admire.
Right. So, as you went through this transformation, part one, and then today, who are your heroes?
Who are my heroes? Wow. Well, I think of Gandhi and Martin Luther King.
Mm-hmm.
There's certainly some therapists, Carl Jung.
Mm-hmm.
I think the great mystics, Jesus, the Buddha, Paramahansa Yogananda, great yogi.
Mm-hmm.
I think people who made a difference on a deep level. Socially, politically, spiritually.
Mm-hmm.
But people who were helping the community are my heroes. So we have to raise our awareness, our consciousness. It's not just about. I think we've reached that level in America where materialism doesn't make you happy. There's nothing wrong with money, but if that's your only goal, I think it's a dead end.
It's going to be hollow.
Yeah. I mean, money's fine, but the pursuit of it only, or to the exclusion of everything else,
Mm-hmm.
I think is a path of ruin. Path of desperation and narrowness.
So you see a lot of people that are probably sitting in that boat.
Sure.
That come to you
Sure.
for advice. What do you tell them? I mean, how do you get people who are unhappy in life? I mean, they've made one step. How do you get them to go to the next steps?
Right.
I mean, the first step being come to see somebody, talk to somebody.
Yeah.
What do we do next?
Well, my job is to ask questions,
Sure.
and to inquire, and what are your passions? What are dreams that you've given up on?
Mm-hmm.
What gives your life meaning? And then usually people can come up with those things, and then I help them with the obstacles. well, I can't do that, or, this is impractical, or, I can't, I don't know if I can, self-esteem issues. I don't know if I could ever do that, but it's my job to help them find a course, or at least take the next step. Or if nothing else, to develop these things on the side, Some people work a job and it's fine just to make a living, and then you cultivate your interests on the side, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, certainly.
But if we don't, we end up depressed, or anxious, or...
Sure. So, how often do you see people who have a dream that they've put on a shelf and then follow that dream and find themselves in a significantly better place?
That's a good question. I would say, a small amount of people. Most people are interested in getting out of their pain and getting a little more functional, and some coping skills.
So do you see that a lot of people just try to get to a point of, okay, now I can move through life rather than live it to its fullest?
Yeah.
I mean, do you think that's just part of our culture now, that we're comfortable being miserable, and as long as we're not too miserable, we push forward?
Yeah, I think that's accurate. However, I just have a client who, can't say his name, of course, but he was just slugging through his job, and I helped him make some decisions that he wanted to make, and now the opportunities have opened up in a huge way about things he is excited about, a dream that he kind of gave up on, and these things are coming in again.
So when you get to see people say, okay, I'm going to go past okay level of misery that I can handle, and pursue their dreams, what's the experience that you see people have? I mean, is that a common experience that they have? That,
well, in this guy's particular case, just to bring it to earth, I mean, once he made the decision to leave his job that he was barely functioning at, the world opened up again. And he has to deal with juggling and the transition and the anxiety about the shift, and financial concerns. But I think it's really exciting.
Is it worth it?
And he's excited about.
So he probably would say it's worth it.
I think he would say it's worth it. Totally.
Very cool. That's very cool. So if you were to be able to go out and just show up someplace where somebody was stuck, which you get to do a lot, and you could only tell them one thing to do to try to move from where they are, what would that one thing be?
Well, I would have, we live in our heads in this culture. I would ask him to ask himself what he really, really wants, and check into his gut and check into his heart. These days I see the heart is more intelligent than the mind.
Why is that?
I think there's a knowingness. I think our soul lives in the heart. I think there's a knowingness in the heart, a divine director that helps us if we ask the questions, if we're willing to discover, if we're open to discovering.
Sure.
And those things get revealed.
How hard is it to get to that point where you can ask yourself those questions?
I think it's about intention and focus. If you have an intention, you really want to get there, you will. And there's a million different avenues for different people. I mean, there's no one way. But life will open up. If you have an intention and you're paying attention, life will open up.
Very
and
cool.
Show you these things.
So, obviously you've reached that point to some degree. It's an ongoing, forever process.
Of course.
I would, of course, I know some of this from talking with you many times.
Sure.
Where's Phil going from what you can see today?
Right. Well, again, I'm called to service, so I'm always working on myself. But really, these days, it's becoming more simple. It's really about being present. You can be present in your life in the moment. The divine lives in the moment. doesn't live in the past or the future. You can't experience the divine in the future or the past. And the mind, when you go into it, often you're in the past or the future. So you can function in the present moment, much better, and there's a knowingness that happens from that.
Sure.
It's not knowledge. If you turn to knowledge, you're back in the mind. But it's trusting the moment and trusting that you know what to do next.
So how do you get there?
I think sitting still helps. I think meditation helps. There's lots of things that help. Creativity helps. Some sort of a mind-body thing helps. But again, it's your intention to be present. And then checking in several times a day. Am I present? Am I really present? Or am I just off in my mind thinking about this?
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense. I think a lot of us get very stuck in the, okay, here's where it didn't go right yesterday, here's why it's not going to go right here in the next few hours.
Yes.
Rather than being, what's going right now, where I am.
You try to figure it out, and you try and strategize to avoid pain. We all have regrets about the past and anxiety about the future, but those things rob us. The more time we spend there, the less we are in the present moment. So the point is, and it takes some trust and faith, I guess, to do that. But the more you crowd those things out and focus on the now, all kinds of opportunities and gifts will come.
So it's interesting. I don't have a degree in psychology, but I did study psychology in college for some time. How variant are you from a traditional psychologist, do you think? Or is psychology moving in the direction where you are?
I hope it's moving in the direction I am.
Certainly.
I don't know. The therapists I know are into like mindfulness and presence. But I really don't know how many psychologists across the country. It's becoming more widespread, I suppose. There's definitely a movement towards that direction. But I don't know, actually.
That's fair enough. Cool. So, if people wanted to learn a little bit more about you, do you have a website they could go to? Or?
Yes, I do.
And what is that website?
Cerdoriancounseling.com.
Cerdoriancounseling.com. Okay, very cool. Well, Phil, I really appreciate you taking some time. Are there any last thoughts you'd like to leave our viewers with? So,
yeah.
A lot of the people that are going to be coming are going to be people who are probably stuck and who are looking for inspiration, motivation to go from where they are today to where you and so many other people who have gotten to, in essence, live their dreams, figure out who they are.
Yes.
What would you like to tell them?
Well, there's always a way. You always have choices. There's always opportunities. But you have to set your intention that you want to do something meaningful or something more true to your own self. And so go for the truth. Go for the truth about who you are and what role or what thing you're going to play in life. And if you have that intention, things will be revealed to you.
Very cool. Thank you, Phil. I appreciate it.
Thank you.